So we're going down to 1. Yesterday I said that this week I was going to be posting some more serious deck lists because, let's be honest, most of what I've posted so far since the expansion dropped has been meme decks, fun lists, things that have sub 50% win rates. There's a couple of things that I have posted. Yesterday is a great example where I do think you can climb with those lists. But for the most part, it's just been a focus on fun, and I usually do that when a new expansion drops. But this week, I thought I would help some folks out who are potentially looking to climb the ladder. And also, this week is just going to serve as the reminder for myself to climb and actually get out of plat. So, we're going to be focusing on a Dragon Demacia list today. This is traditional A-Sol or Aurelion Sol Demacia, if you're not familiar with the terminology. And I'm going to go through the version that I play. There's a lot of different versions. As I go through the deck list, I'll also talk about substitutions that you can make or variations you might see on the ladder, etc., etc. But I want to take a quick moment to remind you that if you just care about the gameplay, you can use time tags, jump straight to the games, and if you're new, you should consider subscribing. So, deck list will be in the video description, deck code will be in the video description. When I say deck list, I mean link to Mobilytics, because I know that that's a little bit better on mobile for some folks. But we're going to go through the list now, starting with Dragon Chow. This card is great in Dragon lists because they help you level up Shyvana. It kind of serves a double duty. So you can play this early and use it as a bit of a chump blocker, because that 3 health is decent enough against most 1-drops. And then if your opponent wants to use like a buff spell to remove the Dragon Chow, that's a win for you. They used a buff spell to get rid of a 0/3 1-drop. And if they don't, then later you drop your Shyvana, you drop your Screeching Dragon, and you get to draw the card. You also buff the dragon because the way it works is the dragon strikes it and it triggers Fury. In the case of Shyvana, it's extra helpful because that counts as dragon damage, so it starts increasing the clock for her level up condition. In fact, it's rare, but if you manage to get all 3 Dragon Chow on the board and play your Shyvana, she instantly levels up and you get to draw 3 cards to replace the Chow. So Dragon Chow is a great early game card. Right now, with the meta so heavily Irelia and Azir, it's great for also chump blocking Sand Soldiers and Blades. Now, you're going to hear me mention that matchup a lot, and I've been mentioning it a lot in the last couple of days, but there's a reason for that. There's another content creator in the community, Dr. LOR, who likes to post data analysis, and they pointed out that right now in plat games, Irelia Azir is like 1/4 of the decks, and even when you go to Diamond, it drops to like 1/5. So it is far and away the most played deck in the history of the game at any point where you've taken like a meta snapshot. So you're going to hear me mention it a lot just because you should expect to see it on the ladder a lot. If you're, in that plat range, in that diamond range, maybe you're at masters, you're probably looking at running into that deck in 1 to 5 games. That's a lot for this game. Historically, Legends of Runeterra has had a pretty diverse meta, so Dragon Chow, great in that matchup. Blue Sentinel, this is one of the reasons that I wanted to share this list, because while the majority of it has not changed, I think Blue Sentinel is a great addition from the most recent release. And the reason I like it is because it's a solid 2-drop, but it fills the place that I think Herald used to be played. So for those who are not familiar, some versions of Dragons used to like to run Herald because it allows you to drop your Shyvana on turn 3. I've always felt like Herald is a bit of a liability. That's my own personal preference. So instead you get Blue Sentinel, and Blue Sentinel has a much better body, still blocks really well, but if you want to sacrifice it against an aggressive player, so, they play an aggressive 2-drop, you play yours and they kill it, because of blue buff, you can still potentially play those 4-drops on round 3, and it's more than just Shyvana. So before, Herald was just Shyvana, but you're going to see this is a list that runs a lot of 4-drops, and the fact that you can drop any of them and you can kind of pick your poison at that point, I think makes Blue Sentinel very, very good. It's also not half bad to draw late, because maybe you drop Eclipse Dragon a little bit sooner. Maybe it gives you that 1 extra mana so that you can play a body plus a combat trick. It's just really versatile, and I think that it's a great addition to the deck, so I'm running that as a 3 of. You will see some versions, I think, that run like 2 copies of this, but I just really like it for speeding things up. Dragon Guard Lieutenant is a fantastic 2-drop because we run a fair number of dragons, and a 3/2 challenger for 2 is a-okay. Lets you set up a lot of good value trades or just crash into things like Irelia, etc. Sharp Sight, I mean, if you're playing Demacia, let's be honest, you're probably playing Sharp Sight. Still really good in this meta. You'll have Azir, Irelia players that are playing at least Dancing Droplet. Some versions are still running Duo. I like to run Duo. I know players like Yoast, for example, like to run Duo, but even if they're not running Duo, being able to get in front of Droplet is a big deal, because if they're running Syncopation or if they've got a leveled up Irelia, then getting a body in front of every spot means you don't have to worry about those swap bursts of damage. And outside of that, it's just a nice +2/+2. And obviously there are other matchups that exist in the game beyond the Azir Irelia one, and some of those have elusive units as well. So Sharp Sight, again, one of the best Demacia cards in the game. The other one, arguably, is Single Combat, and so naturally we're running 3 copies of this. This card, along with Concerted Strike that we're going to see later, are really, really important, because this is how you gain your life in this. So the way that you protect yourself from the kind of burst or burn versions of aggro is usually through that lifesteal. Single Combat gives you another way to trigger that. So if you're looking for a great rebound turn, for example, if you've got the mana banked, you can drop a Sun Forger, you get that attack damage in. Maybe you also Single Combat something. I mean, ideally you get rid of an Azir at that point because it has 5 attack power, but you also gain almost all of your health back at that point. That's +10 health. You kind of reset your board state. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best combat tricks in the game, certainly in Demacia. So we run it. 2 copies of Hush. This is mostly for the other matchups. It's not really huge in the Azir Irelia matchup, but it still does so much work in the other ones. So if you're thinking matchups like Lee Sin, for example, this still does tons of work. Can be pretty decent in the mirror at times because you can shut down their lifesteal if you're trying to race them, for example, etc., etc. So, I mean, Hush is very rarely a 3 of. It's usually a 2 of, but it's a staple in Targon. It's very rare, I think, if you're playing Targon that you're excluding Hush, and there's a reason for that. Shyvana, one of our 2 champions, kind of the point of the deck. We're running a lot of dragons. She gives you a lot of value, not just in her body and her early game presence, but once you level her up, it's another source of strike cards. So when you get to the point where you're getting a strafing strike from attacking every round, you can really put counter pressure on those aggro decks and kind of close things out. So that's a 4-drop. And then, like I said before, running lots of 4-drops. So you've got Sun Forger here and the Fangs. I'm currently on 2 of the Sun Forger, 3 of the Fangs. I've ran versions in the past that just run all of these, but I like the split right now just because Sun Forger can be more beneficial, more swingy on the turns you get to use it effectively, but sometimes you get stuck in a situation where you play it defensively, they don't attack into you, and you don't actually get to take advantage of the lifesteal. So little less high on that one, a little bit higher on Fangs. Both of them, they're serving the same purpose though. You want to take advantage of their lifesteal, and Sun Forger, again, if you play it defensively, sometimes that's just good enough to buy yourself an entire turn though, because if you're playing against somebody like Irelia Azir, they don't really have much incentive to keep attacking into a Sun Forger unless they're trying to further develop their own champion. So what I mean by that is that they might know, if you drop a Sun Forger, they might know they're not going to net any damage. Like, you're just going to be at 20, but maybe they still play like a Duet and a Blade Dance or something so that they level up Azir and they get Irelia either leveled up or close to leveled up. That might be a conscious trade-off they make, but for the most part, if you drop Sun Forger in that matchup defensively, you're pretty well off because you get a lot of health back every time you block. Fangs with the lower health, a little bit harder to do, but you can still use it pretty effectively. Concerted Strike. I'm a big fan. This is just Single Combat's bigger brother, but you get 2 units that get to attack, and it's a one-way strike. I like this because if you've got more than one lifesteal unit, then this is, again, great burst healing, but even with one, it allows you to kind of ensure that you're going to get that damage in. I also like it because it still goes through barriers. You don't see as many of them lately, but it's nice. You will see some lists that run this as a 2 of. That's entirely fine. For example, I've seen ones that run this full package, but this is a 2 of. I think that's just a preference. Screeching Dragon. We're running dragons, so obviously it's a good fit, but this card is just really good for the cost. You get 2 keywords, one of them very relevant in Challenger, and you also have that nice 5 health. Now, because this has Fury, here's the thing about dragons, right? Shyvana, Screeching Dragon, Eclipse Dragon, even Aurelion Sol. Because you're running dragons, these block blades and these block sand soldiers incredibly well. They literally eat them for breakfast because it's a 1-for-1 trade if they don't have something like a Marshal down, and you just get +1/+1 in return, so your health never goes down. You just free block soldiers and you free block blades, and your attack keeps going up and your health stays exactly the same unless they use some sort of buff. So dragons are a great defensive body for the core package of Blade Dance decks. You do still have to worry about elusive, and if they can go wider, they're going to get that chip damage in. You prioritize the sand soldiers first just because they deal more damage, but until they level that Azir, until they get a Marshal down, and some of those decks are even cutting Marshal now, dragons are great to just be a wall against that deck. And the nice thing is once you block with the Screeching Dragon once or twice, its attack is going to be high enough that you can then on your turn go into those attacks to try to target an Azir. So it's just great overall. Star Shaping, more healing. So yes, we have the lifesteal units, but I like having the crutch of the burst healing. Star Shaping also gives you alternate win cons. We've already got some really good ones in Eclipse Dragon and Aurelion Sol, but Star Shaping also is a bit of a toolbox or a tutor because sometimes you can find those removal options. And so overall, I just like running it. You will see some versions that have cut this down a bit, like running a 1 or a 2 of, but I still personally like the 3 because I feel like whenever I need it, I never draw it. It's probably just my own, personal preference / bias, but Star Shaping is in the list. 3 Eclipse Dragon, 3 Aurelion Sol. I like running the Eclipse Dragon and Aurelion Sol in 3s because I like being able to play this on 7 into this on 8 and sometimes sooner because of cards like Moon Silver and now Blue Sentinel. So big fan. Eclipse Dragon, if you are not getting ready to play into an Aurelion Sol, or if you don't have like a backup Eclipse Dragon where you're going to start getting that cost reduction value, it is worth noting that it's actually better, in my opinion, to hold these until you can play something cheaper and actually trigger the Nightfall. I think most folks kind of tunnel vision on the Daybreak because it lets you do that Eclipse on 7, Aurelion Sol on 8, but if that's not readily available, the Nightfall is far more powerful in most cases, so just kind of keep that in mind. But lots of top end here. Again, variations. You will see some folks who only run 2 Aurelion Sol and they might splash 1 Zoe. You'll also similarly see some folks that might only run like 2 copies of Eclipse Dragon and so on and so forth. Now, when I talk about people cutting some of these cards, what are they putting in? What is my deck missing that these other players are potentially running? And the answer is usually more dragon support stuff like Clutch, for example, because maybe they like drawing the cards or like they like the extra combat trick. I personally, I understand the +1/+1. I just haven't had the kind of success with it myself. I don't fault players who prefer it, and I've certainly seen the potential. I just, for whatever reason in my play patterns, it's probably just a play style thing. I don't get as much value out of the Clutch as I do other cards, so I'm not currently running it. You will also again see some folks who just kind of like increase cards like Sunforger. You'll also see some lists that run Mountain Goat to kind of smooth out the early game, or Protege, Laurent Protege. So if they want more Challenger or more early drops, then those are some other cards that you'll very commonly see in these lists. You will also see a non-dragon variant where instead of Shyvana entirely, they run Zoe, still Aurelion Sol on the top end. They might still run Eclipse because it goes so well into this and because of the Nightfall being so strong, but they'll go more traditional Invoke in the middle. They'll still run the Strikes because that's really powerful in Demacia, but you'll see them go a little less heavy on the dragon thing. So like no Chow, no Lieutenant, more traditional target Invoke list that's just Zoe, Aurelion Sol. So kind of keep that in mind as well. That's a non-dragon variant, but it still plays very similarly. And with that in mind, that's the list. Like I said before, deck code in the video description, link to Mobalytics in the video description, and now we're going to go play a couple of games. So we're thrown to the wolves against Aurelia Azir. That's a lot of mastery for this particular deck already showing for them. I like this start. I think we're going to keep everything. We don't have the Dragon Chow into Shyvana shenanigans, but Blue Sentinel is nice. Combat Trick, single combat plus a lifesteal unit. Now another lifesteal unit. This is hopefully a great way to keep things stable for us. There's the Chow to give us something to do on 3. So they're going to go ahead with the old retreat return combo. Attacking on evens, it's like the ideal start. So we could see Azir come down. We could see Aurelia come down here. There's the Azir. All of it's pretty nightmarish. I actually really like... This is a tough call because I really like getting some damage on the Azir, just because if they do run buffs later, it means that single combat's more likely to connect, even if it's at the expense of more health. I think getting the damage on the Azir here is probably correct, because this next round is likely going to be Chow, bank 3 spell mana, and then on the following round we'll be looking to generate some life from Sunforger or Fangs, likely Sunforger, but we'll have to wait and see. That is a defensive round. You usually like to use this on your offensive round, so it might be something like Fangs, but again, if we can also ensure that we're just gonna nuke the Azir, then that's also preferable. So Chow comes down, bank our 3 spell mana.
Give me grace
and so with the level up, now it essentially has to be the Sunforger. This is a fine block here. We could block that there. I mean, at some point we want to block with this round, but I don't think the 1 damage is where you want to do it. And they're gonna do it. They're gonna use the shaped stone to get rid of the Chow, and we're fine with that.
Her light is our sword, her warmth our armor.
Sunforger here giving us a lot of resiliency, so much so that it's potentially stopping them in their tracks. We kind of talked about that. And so now, because they used their shape stone on that Dragon Chow, we get this beautiful trade plus the life, and they're still passing because this still has life steal, so it's essentially negated at that point anyway. Now we can go ahead and go with the Fangs here. I like Serpent because it's free, so we can still have the mana for the Sharp Sight. Also lets us slow play this a bit, because if they do develop an Aurelia or something, then
There's always a way out.
Serpent becomes an option. Serpent here is a great way to threaten this. And I'm also fine with sending the Sentinel here. But I think leaving these others behind is slightly better. So if they're taking this, then they're almost assuredly going to be going for that retreat return. Nothing we can really do about that, but the duet, excuse me, it's not lead follow, the return it's got to be what, Aurelia? Yeah. So we don't have a great way to deal with her at the moment, just because we don't have any strikes in hand, but maybe the Sharp Sight will do some work for us. She's now at 10 of 12. So if we do something like this, we're really only punished by another pump spell. Go ahead and play another Fangs here. Maybe we get lucky. Ooh, bit of a tough call. We expect Aurelia to level up. I think we still take Serpent here. I want the 4 mana available for a number of options. We expect her to level up, so Serpent will not be able to challenge into her effectively. It does, however, go into some of these other options just fine. And so, yeah, they're going to be looking to duet, which will get the Aurelia leveled. If they end up swinging with the Aurelia, in theory, we could block in double Sharp Sight, but that's a really big, like, in theory, because they're going to have the Swapsies, so we might have to actually save the Sharp Sights for attacking into her. They have used 2 retreat returns so far, but there's still plenty of bounce options available to them. I think we're going to develop this blue Sentinel here. I can't imagine a situation where we're going to use both Sharp Sights.
Remember our ancestors and fight for those who came before us.
So at the moment, I think we're looking pretty good if we can just find ourselves
The desert by my side.
That's my cue.
a strike, something to deal with the Aurelia. So we actually could use 1 Sharp Sight to try to ambush this droplet, but with her being able to swap into it, we still lose out in that regard. So I think the best way to navigate this is to just try to find the places where we can still get some sort of a value trade while accepting this as acceptable losses of sorts. Now, they might make this swap just to keep me from gaining the health. Yeah. But we don't have the ability to punish because we can still only play 1 Sharp Sight, so...
How many?
So now we did find a strike. And so we just have to play around them using either bounce options or swapping Aurelia around. So if we do something like this, let's do something like this. We wouldn't mind the blue buff dying this round because it means Aurelion Sol can come down next round. But if that's the case, we kind of want to use our utility here. At the moment, at least, our health is relatively comfortable, but that could change kind of in any different moment. They're just giving Aurelia up. Not what I was expecting, but okay. They must have another one.
Not to forget, but to remember.
We know they have this Blade Dance unit, but I want to wait and see if they play it because that would mean giving up the ability to protect. And they did not do so. So we have to be careful with our single combats. We also didn't lose our blue sentinel. So that means no Aurelion Sol shenanigans. But Screeching Dragon still leaves us with enough mana for everything else. Now we're waiting for a potential swap there, but they just didn't take it, which I find a little interesting. Droplet comes down. And so they're looking to Homecoming there. I think they kept this because that is a way to protect her from targeted removal. And so that makes sense. Deus comes down.
Shoulder set, blade sharpened, plant that lead foot. Don't worry, I've danced this 100 times.
And so we're gonna let that go.
Follow my lead.
And so they've got tons of blade surges available. And I think we do this because this leaves them with no units on board, and then we can single combat with our Sunforger after the fact, because once they have no units on board, they have no mana, and then they'll have nothing to actually swap her with. And so if they are going to make this swap, again, we've got all of our mana available, so we can just go ahead and do this now. And so they'll have to swap her back out. They can swap her here. But now, unfortunately, that does leave them with this unit for the swap. And so I think we just let it go. Because while we could make this attempt, then they can just take yet another swap. So I think here we just bank our spell mana to pair with an Aurelion Sol play and see if they expend resources. Now, I was saying Aurelion Sol, but I actually think Screeching Dragon is a much better play now. Not only because it can challenge into Aurelia and force some stuff out, but then we still have 7 mana available for the pair of strikes, so this is a much better play, a great top deck in this situation.
My hands are shaking. Then hold on to mine. We'll face them together.
And so at the moment, again, this is just free trades and blocks. They were mostly doing that because I know they want to be able to swap this Aurelia with something else. And so we do this. They take the Blade Surge. We try to strike her. Now they have 2 cards left in hand. So if they're both bounce effects, we have a problem. We are a little low on health though. Duo there. Potentially problematic. Oh, they're not going to play the droplet. I expect the droplet to come down, but that was not the case.
I am more than I seem.
We just really need this duo gone before they generate too much from it. So duet, if they can generate it. Oh, they've got another duo in that regard. All right. Oh no. That is so dangerous. So we're going down to 1. There's a strong chance that Hush ends up being instrumental to what we want to do. We have to take the open attack just because, well, I guess we don't have to. I guess actually, hold on. If they play something with a Blade Dance of 2, we're just dead if we don't play the Aurelion Sol. So as weird as it sounds, I actually think that this ends up being correct. Blade Dance of 1 we had blockers for. Blade Dance of 2 is problematic. We want her over there. I think this is going to be bouncing a droplet. There's not a lot we can do to stop that, though. I don't think you use the Hush there. You want to save. You want to save the Hush for when you can actually block and kill this. Like, if I Hush this, it still bounces back. They still have the elusive, right? We can survive the duet. It's just the additional card drawn that's problematic, but... We are dangerously low as they look to continue to pop off. So they have a student. Again, duet is fine for the moment. We can, if anything, this actually helps us just because our dragons get a little bit bigger. Aurelion Sol was going to level either way. We have a Hush for the open attack, but they're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 units, and we just have the Hush. We have this that we can pop off. Nothing we're going to get from this is fast speed, so it 100% comes down to whether or not we draw something. Like, we are in full top deck mode here, unless they get greedy. And that is not good enough. And they give us a gift by not attacking with this. They give us a gift. So this goes here. This goes here. Let's also pop this now while we're at it. get a surrender at 1 health. Oh, wow. All right. That was a bit sweaty, but we got the victory. So let's go play another. All right. It looks like we're going to be up against Zillion Swain. And I legitimately just don't even know how to navigate that. So we're going to throw everything back. We got a lieutenant. Still don't have a dragon. I was kind of hoping to find Chow into an early Shyvana. But I guess this will have to do. And so now we need to make that age-old decision about whether or not to develop our unit without the challenger. And I think the answer is yes. I want to generate pressure. If this is Zillion Swain, I fully expect them to have access to tons of removal. So if they want to take this trade, okay, that works too. That's not good enough. I guess we're playing a third. Well, here's a list I haven't seen in a while. Lucian Callista. So this will be a good test regarding our kind of viability against more traditional aggro lists. And I think this is fine. I think we'd prefer if we had, you know, like a Dragon Chow, a Shyvana, something like that. You could argue maybe Screeching Dragon goes back, but I like having the early Sentinel. I like having the early single combat. And these two are, I think, really solid on-curve plays for when we're turning the corner. This deck really comes online rounds like 4 through 6 because that's where your power plays start hitting the board. So I think this is fine. We're gonna go ahead and develop our blue sentinel, pet our dragon. We got the dragon card back, the dragonling. We're just dragoning it up. We'll take the open attack because it's free, and then we'll develop Chow after the fact. We'd love to top deck a Shyvana for next round. Again, Shyvana is the ideal trigger for this, but if we, you know, end up just hitting it with Screeching on 5, I think that's fine as well. Kind of surprised that we're this late into the game and they haven't played anything yet. So this tells me this actually might be something like either a harrowing version or a bit more combo centric. So they just go ahead with a Swiftwing Lancer. And I think we're just gonna develop this. I expect them to try to eat my Dragon Chow. But I think I just want to protect that with a single combat. Because we want to get rid of this one way or the other anyway. And doing it when they only have 1 mana available makes an awful lot of sense. While still leaving us a little bit of room for our Screecher to grow. And again, if we top deck Shyvana, that's a fine play as well. And Shyvana, perfect. So the reason we like Shyvana more than Screecher is, again, not only does it help with her leveling up, but this also leaves us with mana back. We could theoretically level her up just this round, depending on what our opponent's actions are. It's kind of contingent on her connecting. So if we attack and they try to block and then say like Glimpse, for example, that's going to deny the level up, but they go with a Vile Feast. Seems like an okay start for us so far. So Shyvana connects, so we're up to that 8 out of 12. And so we could level her up, but I think we're just going to save the strike for now. We just want her to be leveled ideally before next round so we get the free strafe. So if we get a good target this round, we'll take our shot. We have the Screeching Dragon, but this round is very likely just going to be double dragon guards so that we can continue this trend. Interesting play.
A soldier should know to
Maybe they're gonna develop a Callista or something, who knows? Or perhaps they're trying to set up something like a black spear. The Dragon Guard, I was on autopilot, was a bit of a misplay. Obviously, you don't want to donate those to your opponent like that, but my mistake, my bad. There was no reason to do that. Sometimes you commit too early to a play mentally, and then when you're not thinking about it, it causes you some problems. All right, so I think here we just take the open. Still really surprised that we haven't seen much from them. This tells me they've got to have some sort of combo coming. So I think saving the strikes is going to be a pretty big deal here. Might as well try to deny the draw, since it's free anyway and we get a little bit of healing out of it. And we'll play a Screecher. I mean, right now it's looking good. We've got a solid board. We just kind of at the moment don't know what our opponent's game plan is quite yet. A lot of mastery on the Solution Callista, so whatever this is, they have the reps in. All right, must have just been a rough hand, but that's a victory. So if you made it this far, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and until next time, may you walk on warm sands.